You the worst to best season 6 SpongeBob episodes. Yeah, let's get started. Number 47, Cephalopod Lodge, my least favorite episode of season 6. The reason why this episode is my least favorite episode is because Squidward actually had something that he enjoyed in life, and SpongeBob and Patrick just came along, ruined it, and then made his life worse, and then made it even worse when they stung him with a jellyfish twice on the tongue. So yeah, and Squidward didn't even give him permission to do that, which is horrible. This episode is a horrible episode. Number 46, Choir Boys. It's kind of like the last one, except for Squidward was a little less happy, so I guess that's a little different. But other than that, it really is like the same episode, except for without Patrick, which is a pretty good difference if you ask me. Number 45, Boating Buddies. It's kind of like Choir Boys, except for it's less annoying, and Squidward was actually, like, he didn't actually have something going for him, unlike, say, him and Cephalopod Lodge. But other than that, this episode, SpongeBob was just really creepy, like, just super creepy. Like, you could, if you watch this episode, you'll see what I mean. Number 44, Squid's Visit. Basically like Boating Buddies, except for a little less creepy. SpongeBob basically replicates Squidward's entire house in a creepy way, and he wants Squidward to come over for some reason. And then the ending is just the creepiest of all, with Squidward going on a diner date with his vacuum cleaner, and then his house burns down. Yeah, not an appealing episode. Number 43, The Splinter. This episode was just made to gross you out, and that it did. It is a horrifyingly disgusting episode that should not be watched by anyone who is sensitive, because you will probably barf because of how gross it is, and the end is disgusting. Patrick is disgusting. The Splinter is disgusting. Everything is disgusting in this episode. Number 42, Giant Squidward. This is basically another Squidward torture episode. It's basically just the whole town torturing Squidward until what he wants to do, and when he does something wrong, they automatically start a riot against him. And it's all because of SpongeBob and Patrick ruining his life again. Whoa, look at the reoccurring theme happening. Number 41, Gone. Alright, so this one, like, it wouldn't be as bad, because, like, most of it was just boring. Like, it wasn't very, like, so, like, you were into it. It's just not exciting at all. Like, and then the ending is what made it go downhill. The ending is just horrible. I mean, National No SpongeBob Day, they burn a statue of SpongeBob. That's terrible. Number 40, The Clash of Triton. Alright, so this episode just was it's not a clash. There is no clash with Triton. It is just some father-son crappy relationship episode, and without all the bad parts, it's just completely bland. And it's also a 30-minute special that they completely hyped up, and it turned out to be absolute garbage. So that's a bonus. It's like, this episode is probably the worst out of all the season endings so far. Number 39, Pet or Pests. It's kind of like the Splinter in a way, but except for the gross out, some of the gross out was replaced with boringness. That's it. Number 38, Dear Vikings. Alright, so take a boring episode and make it somehow just annoyingly bad. This episode just drags on for so long. It's incredibly boring. The jokes are never funny. Like, nothing about this episode is funny. And it's just completely boring and pretty annoying at the same time of how slow it goes. Number 37, Overbooked. A lot of people will disagree with me on this one, but I really don't like the way SpongeBob gets treated in this episode. It's kind of like the best day ever, in my opinion, except for with a better ending, I guess. But that's about it. Number 36, Shuffleboarding. The first ever clickbait to happen. This episode is not about shuffleboarding. It's about SpongeBob and Patrick pretending to be Mermaid Man. and locking people up, and the ending is horrible in this episode. It's basically Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy get harassed for the thing SpongeBob and Patrick did. I wonder why. Number 35, the card. Patrick in this episode is completely annoying. Other than that, the jokes were kind of funny. I mean, it was all around a pretty meh episode. Nothing really went for it, in my opinion. Patrick was sucked in this episode. Number 34, Porous Pockets. This episode, I have mixed feelings about it, because I feel like SpongeBob just completely annoys me in this episode. Like, if it was Patrick replacing SpongeBob and SpongeBob replacing Patrick, it would be a better episode in my opinion, since that would make more sense. But yeah, it's just SpongeBob being horrible to Patrick and making his greed turn on him from Patrick. So yeah. Number 33, Slide Whistle Stooges. This episode is another Squidward torture episode. Basically, SpongeBob and Patrick annoy him with slide whistles. But in the end, Squidward gets in the hospital for inhaling a slide whistle instead of SpongeBob and Patrick. And then SpongeBob and Patrick slide whistle to all the injured people in Bikini Bottom. Whoa! Number 32, Pineapple Fever. Another Squidward torture episode. Although, you might have noticed why all of these are mez. It's because I feel like some of the jokes are pretty good. But I mean, it's not, like, it actually appeals to me on, like, the bad episodes in the Squidward torture category. But still, this episode is still on the low meh. Low meh is either high bad or low meh. They're about the same, except for a little better. But anyway, Pineapple Fever is basically where SpongeBob and Patrick get Squidward inside the house and keep on torturing him. And then SpongeBob, in the end, is completely annoying. Number 31, Professor Squidward. This episode, I feel like Squidward was kind of in the wrong, and so was SpongeBob and Patrick. But I feel like Squidward getting arrested was, like, too extreme. I feel like he should have been left off with a warning. But other than that, there's nothing really to say about this episode because it's super meh, in my opinion. Number 30, Grooming Gary. I feel like this episode, like, I have mixed feelings about it too. I feel like some of it, just not to treat your pet in, like, a fashion way is a pretty good lesson. But I don't like the way Gary or the other pets get treated also. I feel like it's kind of counteracts with this. Number 29, Shell Shocked. Take Grooming Gary and just make it less annoying. That's basically this episode. It's a pretty boring episode. Number 28, Patty Caper. Basically, in this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to figure out who stole the secret formula. And it turns out, in the end, it was Mr. Krabs, because he was trying to save money. Usually, this type of plot would get it into a higher meh, but the thing that really put it into the low meh category was the fact that Mr. Krabs tried to put the blame on SpongeBob, and why wouldn't he pay for the ingredient when he clearly would have made more money if he paid for it. Number 27, Toy Store of Doom. Again, another pretty bland episode with nothing going for it. I really didn't find myself engaged in this one because I wasn't really into it. It's pretty boring all around. Number 26, Nautical Novus. Again, like Toy Store of Doom, like, it's just another boring Season 6 plot where SpongeBob tries to impress Mrs. Puff. Except for I don't care because it's super boring. Number 25, Ditchin'. It's basically like the last one. It has to do with boating school. SpongeBob ditches so he can go to Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy club thing so he can get his comic signed by Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Basically, it's him ditching class, and then a bunch of things happen to him to make him almost ditch class. But turns out Mrs. Puff gets arrested in the end. Who would have guessed? Mrs. Puff being arrested? Not a surprise. Number 24, Gullible Pants. This one, it's basically like the other ones. Pretty boring, nothing going for it. That's all it is. Like, I mean, there's like 2 jokes, I feel like, in this episode. I don't know. I couldn't pay attention due to how boring it is. Number 23, Sun Bleached. I feel like that it's, again, another season 6 boring plot, except for, like, the jokes are actually better, but that just kind of gets erased by the fact that people don't like SpongeBob by the way his skin is, which is completely weird, and I'm gonna not say what else it is, because you can figure that out yourself. Number 22, To SquarePants or Not to SquarePants. A stupid title. They hyped this episode so much, and it turned out to be a flop because it's completely boring. Number 21, Truth or Square. Now, a lot of people will disagree with me on this one and say that it should be completely in the bad, maybe even the worst episode of Season 6. But here's the thing. I like the SpongeBob segments. I actually really like the SpongeBob segments. I like the stories they tell. I think it's pretty interesting. But here's the thing. The reason why it's in a meh, even though I love the SpongeBob segments, it's the patchy segments. Everyone can agree the patchy segments are just boring, cheap things that are just there to fill up time. They're completely boring and kind of cringe-worthy and whatever you want to call it, annoying. Yeah, I mean, but like combined, that just makes the perfect meh. And the thing that actually makes it even worse is that this was supposed to represent the 10-year anniversary special. That's another thing. Number 20, Chum Caverns. I feel like this one has a lot of like unique things going for it, like the cavern style, the creatures and stuff. Plankton actually being successful. But honestly, it just dragged on like any other season 6 episode. Number 19, The Slumber Party. Again, like Chum Caverns, except for the plot is a little more interesting. Other than that, it's basically just Pearl and her friends have a slumber party. Mr. Krabs thinks they're gonna ruin the house. Basically, that's it. Number 18, A Life in a Day. Again, another season 6 episode that just drags on and not investing at all. I feel like this episode just like had nothing going for it. Just like every single season 6 Matt episode, you have no idea what the heck is going on because you're too bored, because these are just filler episodes. Number 17, The Krabby Chronicle. Honestly, unlike some of them where I say they drag on, boring, whatever, this one's a meta, kind of like in the Truth or Square style. I like the idea of SpongeBob getting on the stories. I really like the story aspect. But the thing that makes it go into the meh category is Mr. Krabs' cheapness getting the best of him. Number 16, Penny Foolish. I feel like it's kind of like the last one, except for with more clever jokes that actually make it funny enough to make it a high meh. Number 15, Computer Overload. I feel like the idea of just replacing Karen with another computer is a pretty unique concept, and the ending where Karen goes back is pretty cliche, but other than that, that's about it. Number 14, Spongicus. I feel like the idea of this episode is super cool, and I feel like some of the parts actually were investing, but they could have made this episode a lot better, a lot better. Number 13, No Nose Knows. Again, a lot of people will disagree with me on this one because they don't like Patrick here, which I can see. He was being pretty annoying with the sense of smell and stuff. But I feel like that he actually, not Patrick, but I feel like the idea of Patrick getting a nose and then everyone else having to like deal with the issue, and in the end, it was actually pretty funny. Number 12, KRUSTY KRUSHERS. A lot of people will also disagree with me on this one because they say it should be higher. But here's the reason why. I do like the things that people like to say, like Patrick and SpongeBob fighting against these giant people and end up winning is pretty cliche, but also pretty funny, and how the wrestling scenes were actually cool. And Mr. Krabs not winning in the end was also pretty satisfying, but I feel like some of it just dragged on for too long to me. Number 11, Plankton's Regular. Okay, yeah, as you can tell, the goods and the bads for season 6, a lot of people will disagree with me. Some say it should be higher, some say it should be lower. Like this episode, a lot of people will say this episode should be lower. The reason why they say this is because, well, they don't like how Mr. Krabs just wants to make Plankton completely miserable, which I see. Mr. Krabs is the reason why this episode is lower. But here's the reason why I actually like it. The way Plankton and this character's chemistry goes together is really unique. Number 10, House Fancy. House Fancy, like, a lot of people will say, oh, but the toenail scene, that one scene automatically make it bad, go to the bottom. I completely disagree. There's been countless scenes with cringeworthy content that I think was worse than the toenail scene, and people rate them as good episodes. But House Fancy, that toenail scene is actually the reason why it's kind of down here. There are other reasons too, like SpongeBob and Patrick destroying Squidward's house. But the reason why this episode is up here, because seeing Squidward winning in the end actually made me satisfied. So yeah, number 9, SpongeBob SquarePants versus the big one. A lot of people, again, will say, oh, this one should be a meh. It was pretty boring, in my opinion, but I don't think it was boring. I feel like the fact that SpongeBob and Squidward and Patrick and Mr. Krabs and Sandy all get lost in their own areas. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward have to surf their way back to Bikini Bottom. And the fact that JKO taught them was pretty funny. And also, Mr. Krabs' part was also funny. Sandy's part was funny. All of it was pretty funny. Number 8, Sandcastles in the Sand. Again, I feel like everyone would be typing in the comments right now saying, oh, this one should be number 1. But it's not. It's only number 8 because I feel like the other episodes higher than this are just completely better. And also the fact that I like the plot. Like the plots are more investing than this one. Not to say this plot isn't investing. I like the competitiveness of Patrick and SpongeBob going off with these amazing visualized sandcastle things. Number 7, Krabby Road. Krabby Road is an episode where, like, Plankton tries to steal the formula, basic stuff, but instead they made it in a unique way where he joins a band with SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward, and the fact that the ideas of the bands are pretty unique makes it even better. Number 6, Grandpappy the Pirate. This episode is all the way up here for the reason that I really like the fact how Mr. Krabs isn't trying to be cheap for once, and he's actually like trying to make it so he can impress his grandfather instead of being in the fast food business. But then in the end, when his grandfather talked about it to him, that was pretty good. Number 5, Not Normal. Not Normal is an episode a lot of people like. And the reason why I like it is because I feel like the idea of SpongeBob being normal and being in a normal life is pretty unique in how basic and boring he is, and how nobody seems to like enjoy him after his normalness is pretty cool too. Number 4, Single Cell Anniversary. A lot of people will say that this episode was just like some cheap thing about Plankton and Karen's love, but I actually liked it. I feel like it was a really sweet episode, and the song in the end was also pretty good. I know Plankton was doing this for the formula, but I still think it was sweet. Number 3, No Hat for Pat. I feel like the Patrick episodes where he works at a job are way better than like the ones where he's hanging out with SpongeBob, and this one is not an exception. This one is good because I really like the idea of Patrick working for the Krusty Krab and how he has to like fall to entertain people, and in the end where he loses his job, like that was pretty obvious, but still. Number 2, Chum Bucket Supreme. Yet another episode where Patrick gets hired. Basically, Patrick comes up with this brilliant slogan, Chum is fun. So everyone just starts going to the Chum Bucket, which I really like the idea of that. Just Patrick and Plankton working together is a pretty cool combination, and how everyone just starts buying their food then. Number 1, my favorite season 6 episode is Suction Cup Symphony. I feel like this episode is heavily underrated. The reason why I think it's heavily underrated is because Squidward actually gets what he wants in the end. Like him like writing the fact that he wrote everything he heard was a pretty funny idea, and how like Patrick and SpongeBob were doing all these weird things on the stage was also really funny. And in the end, where Squidward actually got his dream and everyone cheering him on was very satisfying. And I feel like this episode should get a lot more recognition than some of the other Season 6 episodes, considering how bad Season 6 was. Anyway, on to the statistics. There were 12 bad, 22 meh, and 13 good, which makes this a mess season, which is pretty obvious considering 22 of the 47 episodes were meh. And the rankings: number 1 is Season 3, number 2 is Season 2, number 3 is Season 4, number 4 is Season 1, number 5 is Season 5, number 6 is Season 6. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys later. Bye.